Hello everybody, my name is Justin. Welcome back to the studio, and in this video we're going to begin the Inspired Handbag series. So I am calling this episode 0 of this series because I'm going to go over every single piece of hardware you're going to need for this bag. I'm going to go over all the leather that I'll be using and the thicknesses. I'll also be covering the supporting materials that I'm going to be using and those thicknesses. And most importantly, I'm going to be covering the plans that will be available for this bag. So if you do want to get a set of these plans, you can head to the link in the description below. So to start off this video, let's discuss the hardware. So the hardware kit for this project was kindly provided by Hilti Bag Hardware. Link in the description below if you want to check out their website. This is stainless steel gold-plated hardware. It is absolutely beautiful. So I'm going to go over each piece here. The plans are also going to include a full breakdown of each one of these pieces along with their sizes, just so that you can ensure you're getting the same one that I've got here, and then it's going to match the plans as they're drawn. So starting with the bag feet, it comes with 4 bag feet that measure about 11 millimeters or so, 11 millimeters across. And then this kit actually came with 2 different sizes of screws. So there's 2 different lengths here. So depending on how much supporting material you're going to be using, you can choose the appropriate screw length. So I've got the short one, which is 6 millimeters, and then the longer one coming in at about 8 millimeters. So depending on your end thickness of your bottom piece, you can choose the appropriate screw that's going to match. One thing to note with these, because you're in some cases looking to compress your material, you do have to make sure that the final piece is the proper thickness. You're going to see that in the bottom support. You're also going to see that in the front panel where the plaque goes. Those double cap rivets are a certain length. You want to make sure that they pull tight once they're hammered in place. So you got to make sure those arrows are all built up properly, which is another reason I'm giving you all of the dimensions for the post lengths. Next up is the turret. So this is the actual locking mechanism. It comes with the main piece. It also comes with a little metal backing plate that obviously goes on the inside of the bag. And then these extremely tiny black screws secure the whole thing together. You're probably gonna need a pair of tweezers to hold some of these parts because they are extremely small. Not much to be said other than if you don't get this exact piece and it doesn't look exactly like this, then it may not match the plans. The overall size of the plate is probably going to be the same, but the 4 holes in the corners, they may not match. So just make sure whatever hardware plate you have, you adjust the plan according to the plate that you have so that your screw holes are going to line up. We also have the clasps for our strap. The internal diameter on this measures 10.5 millimeters. So the plans you'll see have the cutout that match this. So if the hardware you get is anything different or slightly different than this, then you're going to have to adjust that swoop in just a little bit to make sure it fits perfectly. We also have the double D rings that attach the top handle to the bag. There's no real orientation to these. Make sure you check yours. They should look pretty much identical. I think they are symmetrical. Double check yours just in case there is a orientation to them. You want to make sure they're installed correctly. We also have the hardware pieces for the sangles. Those are the 2 straps that come around the front. There's 1 plate for each sangle. On the back, there is no plate. The back of the hardware goes the larger rivet versus the smaller one that slides in to the top. We also have the plaque that goes on the inside flap. This one has a front and a back to it. So the larger rivets go with the larger hole, obviously, and the smaller ones go in the smaller one. This is again where I mentioned earlier, you're going to have to take into account the post length. So the amount of post that's exposed here is about 2.5 millimeters. So I have to make sure that I build up that area so that its thickness is just slightly above 2.5 millimeters, so that when I go to hammer these rivets in place, they squeeze in and that plaque is held nice and tight. Now along those lines, I do have this specialty tool called a perlage. I'm not sure, probably not saying that correctly. You don't need this tool to install these double cap rivets. You can do it with just a nice polished hammer face and a flat surface, maybe a little piece of leather to protect the hardware. It'll hammer in just fine, but this tool should make the installation a little bit smoother, a little bit cleaner. Some of the supporting hardware, we have a steel plate that goes underneath the handle to support the top of the bag. That comes with 4 rivets for installation. So double check once again that the width and the length of your steel plate is the same as the one indicated on the plans. And finally, we have the handle form. You can make this on your own if you want, just building up a bunch of pieces of leather, carving it to shape. This is really handy and saves some significant time, and it's going to give you a nice perfectly uniform finish. So I like using this. Hold its shape pretty well. So if you were to hold this in its shape, put an elastic around there, it would actually hold there pretty well, and it won't bounce back too much once it's held in place for a period of time. Just makes forming that handle a little bit easier to maintain that nice smooth curve. The last piece of kit from this hardware set is all the zipper components. This one I'm putting aside because this version that I have does not include a zippered pocket. It just has the front open pocket. So you won't need this hardware, but it does come with it. And finally, the odd man out here, the lock and key set. This is obviously not from this set, but there's a bit of a mix up in transit, and I don't currently have the one that matches the other hardware. This is from a previous kit I purchased, but you will get the lock and key set with 2 keys for your clochette. So that wraps up the overview of the hardware. Again, this kit was from Hilti Bag Hardware. Check out the link in the description below. You can reach out to them by email or Instagram. You can ask for this hardware, mention my name, and they'll get you hooked up with everything you see here. So in terms of leather for this project, we're using 2 different colors and 2 different weights. So our main leather is going to come in at about 1 millimeter or so, give or take. So I've had this one split down to the appropriate thickness. And then our lining leather is coming in at about 0.8 millimeters. If you can see that, 0.8 approximately. If these aren't exact, that is fine. The leather I'm using for this is Algren Sully. The main leather is going to be this beautiful jade color. And then the secondary leather is going to be malachite. Beautiful colors. You'll have seen these colors in the other bag that's already posted online. This is the exact same combination. So I'm using 2 different weight leathers. You're probably going to want to do that. The lining leather you want a lot thinner. You could even go thinner than 0.8 if you wanted to. I like having a bit of body to the leather, thin down the sides so that the edges don't become too thick. Algren, or I should say Sully leather, is a medium temper, so it does have a bit of body to it. It's not too soft. So my reinforcement for this will be my bonded leather. I'm going to be talking about that one next. If you're using a softer leather or thinner leather, you may need more structure behind it. This bag does have a fairly heavy structure to it, so you want the front and the back fairly firm. So keep that in mind and make the appropriate decisions with the leather that you're using. If it's a heavier weight, maybe you don't need as much reinforcement. If it's more firm leather, maybe you don't need as much reinforcement, or the exact opposite. suggest getting one of these little leather thickness gauges. They're pretty handy just to check the thickness that you're working with, especially when it comes to skiving. Later on in the video series, you'll be seeing me use this quite a bit. So here's a breakdown of the reinforcement materials you're going to need to complete this bag. Or I should say, I strongly recommend to get the desired result and style of this bag. So let's start with the heavy duty stuff. This is our brio. This we're going to use for the base of the bag. This is going to go underneath. This is going to go on the very bottom of the bag to give the base as much structure as possible. This brio is coming in at just under 1 millimeter, 0.9 millimeters thick. It's extremely rigid. It's going to add the most structure possible to your leather projects. So if you're using a thinner leather, or I should say a softer temper leather, you're going to want to probably back up your main pieces, your main front, your main back with this instead of our bonded leather, which I'm going to use. So you're going to have to make that call based on the thickness and the temper of the leather you're using. But for the plans that we have, I only call for brio for the base. So that's brio, that's our most stiff form. Dropping down to our softest supporting material, this is our padding, this is our microfiber. So this is coming in at 0.2 millimeter, 0.3 or so. All of this is going to do is add a bit of hand to some of the parts. So this is going to mainly be used on the handle. So this is going to go between the leather, the microfiber, and then all the other structure that makes up the handle. This just provides a nice little feel, nice little padding so that it feels nice. We're also going to add this to the strap to give it a bit of cushioning so it's a little bit more comfortable to wear. So this is our microfiber. From there, we got our bonded leather. This is natural color. You can also get it in black. This comes in at 0.4, 0.5 millimeters. This is going to be used quite extensively. This is the material I'm going to use to support the front and the back of the bag and a bunch of other pieces. I'll use this also to build up the padding that's in the strap holder on the top of the bag. You'll see that in your plans. I've become a huge fan of this bonded leather. This brand is specifically called Salpa. You can get it from a bunch of different brands, but this is the one I'm using. 0.5 millimeter bonded leather. Use this quite extensively in this project. Finally, we have our Velodon. So this is our non-stretch tape. We're going to use this in a bunch of different spots. You don't need a ton of this. You can just buy one small panel. It's pretty cheap. I have got the black version that has the sticky back already in place. You can get the cheaper one, which doesn't have this. You can glue it yourself. I just find it with the sticky back. It's extremely easy to use and perfect for preventing any stretch in the areas where you don't want your leather stretching out. So that is our reinforcement material. This is all what I recommend for this project. It is not necessarily what you need for it. If you don't want to use it, you don't have to. Just understand that adding these things to the back of the leather, to the inside of the bag, is really what's going to set it apart and really elevate the level of work that you start doing when you start getting into adding these types of materials to your bag. So I just wanted to show you a few of the, I guess, specialty items that I'm using for during this project, or things you may not already have on hand, or details that you may need to know, like thread size. Okay, so you've seen me using the leather thickness gauge. This is a really affordable one that I got on Amazon. It works perfectly fine. You don't need to spend a lot of money on these, at least not when you're starting out. If you need perfect accuracy, spend a lot more than this, but this is always going to get me in the ballpark. So I am happy to use an affordable one just like this. I showed you earlier the perlage tool that I'll be using to install the rivets. This is definitely not needed, but could be a nice to have. I have these bag clips or clamps, whatever you'd like to call them. So what they do is allow you to align two pieces once you've glued them together. So you stick this needle through, this clamps on the other side, and allows you to squeeze those pieces together. This is a very handy thing to have, especially when you're starting to install the gussets. These things can come in handy. They just hold everything in place. Our edge creaser, I'm using an FN3 tip to do all my edge creasing. Get yourself one of those. And then I also have the spatula tip that I will use to apply or to smooth out the edge paint or smooth out the wax finish that I add on the end with Columbus wax. I will also be using clear Columbus wax for this, just to finish off those edges. The paint I'm going to be using along those notes is a mix of Giardini. So these are all custom colors that I've done. Jade matching the jade thread and a custom malachite edge paint that matches the same thread. The thread is 0.05 millimeter superfine Masai linen thread, which I will wax before I use it each time. To apply that edge paint, I have either a paint roller, which you might see me use. I have my standard awl, which is usually my preference. And then I just picked up this paint roller, which I'll be using for the first time to try out on the smaller pieces and kind of the straight edges. I want to see how this thing works. This just seems like a really high quality piece. So hopefully this works out and hopefully it speeds up the application process of the edge paint. And I'm hoping it's going to apply a nice even thin layer to make that whole process just a little bit easier. Finally, my Maxida stitching pony, which I absolutely love. The only thing when you're working with bags, it does not have the extended arm to support the larger bags. So I made one. This design is from the Dream Factory stitching pony. So they actually had measurements on their website with the arm that comes with their, I think it's their large stitching pony. So I just kind of based it off of that. The construction here is more or less the same. I use different toggles here just because that's what I could find. But I made this because the first time I made the bag, it was somewhat difficult to hold the top of the bag, which is sitting way up here. It was really floppy. This, I'm going to attach a binder clip to the end. That's going to hold the bag upright, especially when you're stitching in your base to the front and to the back. So that's just a few of the specialty tools I'll be using throughout the project. So here's a quick overview of the full scale pieces so you can see what you're going to get in these plans. I've broken each one of these out into the different materials that we're going to be using so that you can see how much you're going to kind of need of each. Again, the plans are going to include all of the amounts that you're going to need. So starting with our microfiber or our padding, we're going to use that on the handle top and the handle bottom. So that represents those two pieces. Then we have our Velodon. We just need this in our buckle tab reinforcement. And then our back panel handlebar. This is going to cover the double capped rivets so that we don't feel them on the inside. So not a whole lot of Velodon in this project, but it is still good to have some of that. Moving on to our bonded leather. We have a few pieces here. Our handle reinforcement. That is going to be the main base of our handle. Will be the bonded leather. We have bonded leather on the bottom support that smooths everything out from the bag feet that will be installed. Make sure you don't feel it. Our front pocket support, the lining will have a piece of bonded leather glued to it, And then our front pocket will be stitched through the bonded leather to make sure it doesn't tear. Our back panel flap support, so this is on the very front of the bag. That adds some rigidity. The handle underneath it gets some bonded leather. That again adds rigidity. Our strap holder is lined with our bonded leather to add a bit of thickness. And then we have our back support for our front panel and our back panel. This is what adds the structure to the front and the back of the bag. That is our bonded leather. And we have our bottom support in our brio, just one piece of that. And then we have our lining leather. Lots of lining leather. This is our 0.8 millimeter. We have our buckle tab or the sangles, which is what these technically are called. We have our lining leather for each one of those. We have the back leather for those as well. We have our handle top and our handle bottom leather. We have the two strap holders, the clochette strap and the clochette itself. Our front pocket that goes on the inside, we line it with these three pieces of lining leather. Then we have our bottom lining. This is the leather you're going to see on the inside of the bag. We have our two side panels, obviously on the inside. And then our front panel lining, and includes the guide marks for our front pocket, including the stitch holes. And then our back panel lining. Finally, last but not least, we have our main lining leather, the 1 millimeter, 1.2 millimeter leather you're going to have. We have some added support for our strap holders. We have our bag charm that's going to be made out of that. We have our front pocket that will be the full thickness of that, again with the lining on the back of it. Our two side panels, the very bottom leather, and then obviously the front piece and the back panel. So that is a quick breakdown of all of the different parts we're going to need based on the material they're made out of. So our 1.2 millimeter main leather, our 0.8 millimeter lining leather, piece of brio for our bottom support, all of our bonded leather. We have our padding, microfiber, and then a few pieces of Velodon we're going to need to add some support where we need it. So talking about the plans that you're going to get with this project, what you just saw are the full scale plans that I've printed out on my laser, and you can see all the details that are included in those: stitch marks, alignment marks, guide marks with where things are going to connect together. Every single detail you need about each one of these pieces is going to be included on each one of the parts. The plans are going to include full scale pages of this on A0 paper. So if you do want to get this printed at a local print shop, you can just send them that file. They'll print it out full scale, no shrinking or anything of it. 100% you should have the plans come out exactly as they are here. I do have reference marks on there, so you can take a measurement of the little box to make sure it is printed at the appropriate scale. But for those that don't have access to that, I have broken each one of these pieces out into letter size paper. For North American friends here, which is most of you, we've done it on that versus doing A4. For the rest of the world, letter is probably just more popular, but you can print letter on A4. Just make sure your scaling is always at 100% so that it doesn't shrink down or expand or anything like that. You can just position it properly on the page that you're printing. Another note on these plans, the stitch spacing that I've done is the one that I use, which is 3.38 millimeters. I've kept one stitch spacing for the entirety of the bag. Oftentimes you're going to do a shorter stitch spacing, like 3 millimeters on the smaller parts, like maybe the handle, the bag charm, the clochette. The smaller pieces sometimes looks a little bit better if you tighten up that stitch spacing. I think it's way easier to just stick with one stitch spacing because most of the time you don't have multiple irons in multiple sizes. Now, on the note of stitch spacing, this is built for 3.38. If you're using 3 or 4 millimeters, your hole alignment will not be perfect. I have built these plans out from the stitch line so that this distance, using the side gusset, divides exactly evenly from corner to corner by 3.38. You try to use 3 millimeter on here, it's going to be off. 4 millimeter, it's going to be off. So you will have to make that adjustment when you're using these plans if your stitch spacing is different than mine. However, given the price that I need to charge for these and the hours that I put into it, what I am going to do is offer the 3.38 right now. If you use different stitch spacing and you purchase the plans now, leave a note in the comments and you will get full scale, the exact same plans in that stitch spacing. So on that note, because I only have this one stitch spacing, what I'm going to do is offer a discount right now for anybody that purchases the plans now. Even if it's not the exact stitch spacing you're going to need, you'll just need to give me a few weeks, you will get it. But you're going to get 20% off the plans right now until I get them posted with the other stitch spacing. So if you purchase those plans now, you know you are going to get 3.38 down the road. There will be availability for the other stitch spacings. I will send them out automatically for anybody who has purchased those plans, so you don't have to worry about it. You'll get them in your inbox as soon as they're available. So on that note, if you purchase these plans, I greatly appreciate it. The links to my suppliers below still have discount codes available. If you purchase from them, I don't get any commission or anything like that, but you are supporting some great companies. So they also say thank you very much for supporting them. I do have affiliate links with Lonsdale Leather and any Amazon links you see, so I do get a small percentage if you use those links and make a purchase. So if you have any questions about this upcoming project, let me know in the comment section below. If you know you're going to be purchasing the plans and you know what stitch spacing you're going to want, leave that in the comment section below because that's going to give me a really good idea of what I can expect. And then I can possibly start working on these updated plans with the different stitch spacing right away. And again, this hardware kit is from HiltiBagHardware.com. I think that's my website. Link in the description below. This is a beautiful hardware kit. So if you do want to make this bag, go reach out to Carl. He'll get you hooked up with all the different pieces. And finally, in terms of how this series is going to be structured, this is for a paying customer. So I'm going to be focused on the execution of this and less on talking to camera like this. So all future episodes will likely just be voiceover of me making the bag. I am going to cover all of the different shots, but I'm going to set up the camera and then just start working on it. I'm not going to be talking to the camera because that is incredibly distracting when you're working on a project, and I need to stay focused on executing this to the best of my abilities. So all future episodes are going to be in the style of a voiceover, probably some music going through it, but it will show every single step of making this project. I'm obviously not going to show you stitching the entire part of the bag because the whole series would take 40 hours, but you will see the start and stop of where you need to start stitching, where you need to stop stitching, let's say on the top handle, how to assemble that. I will show you all the proper steps so that you are guided properly when making this plan, but I won't show the repetitive one. Big one, edge finishing. I'll show you a little bit of that. I'll talk about that when I first start, but I'm not going to show the entire length that it takes to edge finish a bag because that would take hours and hours and hours. So I'll show you the first little bit depending, probably it's going to be on the handle because that's a thicker edge. So I'll probably show you all of that. But the rest of the bag, I'm not going to bother showing you because that's a waste of your time. I'll highlight that in each episode. And at the beginning of each episode, I will likely do a piece of the camera just talking about what this episode contains, because I'm also not quite sure where I'm going to break up the episodes, because this I'm going to be filming basically every day. Normally I film Wednesdays and Thursdays for these videos, but since this is following a project, then it's likely going to be filmed every day. I may break up the videos to 2-day chunks. We'll see how it goes. I'll organize it the best I can. But you can expect episode 1 next week. So thank you again for watching. If you do have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section below. To get these plans, they are also linked in the description. My website, norfolkhandmade.com. If you want to follow daily updates on this, head over to my Instagram account, norfolk.handmade. I'll be posting stories once I get started on this. That's a good little supplement in case I touch on anything. So it's probably good to follow there, especially for this project. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next week.